Mr. Speaker, I think I'd better keep this brief. And the answer that the Honourable Lady knows very well is that we are hard at work negotiating our potential accession to Horizon. That is our preference, as I've been very clear here this morning. But I think she is out of step with key voices in the sector. For example, we hear from the Russell Group, who say that our negotiations are a serious step forward, and the ambition of the proposals for Pioneer is welcome. More details will become clear as negotiations progress, but I cannot give a running commentary.
I think it seems that the Tory science superpower is actually just cooking the books. Now, ministers promised to increase science spend outside London and the South East by a third, while doubling it overall, so our regions continue to miss out. Now they're refusing to replace European regional development science funding, slashing 600 million from what should be our regional powerhouses. That's not levelling up, it's holding us back. The country knows it, does she?
Mr. Speaker, I think she's mischaracterising this very badly and in a way that does not help to command confidence in our shared mission to make science, innovation and technology the success that it needs to be for this country. She will have seen my right honourable friend's presentation at the budget, the Chancellor's presentation at the budget, which...
Yeah, that thing put me to sleep. Thanks for that, QA. That was the most boring thing I've ever seen. So, you know, I don't think anyone really paid attention to the budget, but to argue we're going to be a science powerhouse is nonsense, especially outside the Horizon programme.
Makes clear just how seriously we take science in this country, and that level of ambition will continue.
Aaron Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last month, Sir Patrick Vallance stepped down as Government's Chief Scientific Advisor after 5 years in the role in which government investments in science has doubled, but most of all, he became a household name for his handling of COVID and the leadership he showed then. So would the Secretary of State join me in thanking Sir Patrick for all his service to the country and welcoming his successor, Dame Angela McLean, and wishing her all the best in the role?
May I, as Science Minister on behalf of the Government, pay tribute to both Sir Patrick and thank Dame Angela for taking on the...
Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At question number one.
Mr. Speaker, I know the House
honest.
will join the nation and the Commonwealth in sending our very best wishes to Their Majesties the King and Queen ahead of the Parliament.
Couldn't care less, big man. Couldn't care less.
This will be a moment of extraordinary national pride, a demonstration of our country's character, and an opportunity to look to the...
All you're going to see is hatred of the monarchy, I'll be honest. There's going to be a lot of protesting, and no one likes Charlie.
Future in the spirit of service, unity and hope. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Sir Stephen Timms.
Mr. Speaker, at question time last week, column 725, the Prime Minister referred to record numbers of people in work. In fact, as he knows, the number of people in work at the moment is still less than it was just before the pandemic, 122,792 less, according to the latest official figures. Will he reassure the House that he's not slipping into the bad ways of his predecessor but one? And will he properly correct the incorrect statement he made last week?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that clarification has already been made, Mr. Speaker, in Hansard, but there are near record numbers of people in work and in payroll, and that is thanks to the actions of this government, Mr. Speaker, one record we're very proud of.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. Non-compliant hand car washes seem like a cheap and quick way to have our cars washed. But unfortunately, behind this £1.8 billion industry is hidden money laundering, fraud, drug dealing, prostitution, labour abuse, modern-day slavery, tax avoidance and many other sinister crimes. This is an estimated £500 million lost in tax revenue, a pull factor for illegal migration, and the pollutants often used are damaging to the environment. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that it's time that we now step away from the voluntary scheme and have a mandatory scheme to protect people?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we expect all businesses to follow the law, including providing fair pay and working conditions for their employees. We're tackling exploitation in the labour market, especially by increasing funding for enforcement bodies to over £35 million a year, and we will continue to keep the position of hand car washes under close review.
But now comes the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister in his comments about the coronation? Across the House, we're all looking forward to the celebrations this weekend.
No one cares.
Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister know how many mortgage payers are paying higher rates since the Tory party crashed the economy last autumn?
Well, Mr. Speaker, our record on home ownership is crystal clear. Because of our tax cuts, 90% of first-time buyers now don't pay any stamp duty at all, Mr. Speaker. And last year we saw the largest number of people buying their first home in 20 years, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, that was partially due to the stamp duty cut, partially due to the fact that people had money and didn't know where to spend it on. So some of these people bought houses instead of going on holiday. But yeah, you know, the housing market was extremely hot last year, thanks to the low interest rates as well, and that's kind of eroded now.
That's a Conservative government delivering on people's aspirations to own their own home.
Mr. Speaker, the question was how many people are paying more on their mortgages each month. And the answer that the Prime Minister avoided giving is 850,000. Nearly 1 million people paying more on their mortgage each month because his party used their money as a casino chip. That's why George Osborne called them economic vandals, who created a self-inflicted financial crisis. Not for the Prime Minister and his non-dom thing, not for the super wealthy they gave tax cuts to, but for mortgage holders all across the country. So, does the Prime Minister know how many more people will be joining them on higher mortgage rates by the end of this year?
I'm assuming Starmer has the answer. This is a good line of questioning, but the issue is that renters are struggling as well. That's going to be a bigger problem, I think. Zero stamp duty pushes up prices as stamp duty exempt purchasers have more spending power. Yeah, because the homeowners or the people selling the houses can just put up the prices of the house of it, I think.
Mr. Speaker, thanks to the actions we're taking, in fact, the Bank of England is showing that public expectations of inflation have now eased to a 15-month low, Mr. Speaker. Consumer confidence is at the...
Because it can't go much higher, Chief. It can't be consistently at 10% each month, because it's just... If that happens, you're cooked, bruv. Let's be honest now.
Highest level that it's been at since Russia invaded Ukraine, and because of our stewardship of the public finances, we can see a clear way to reduce debt and bring interest rates down. But, Mr. Speaker, he keeps in this habit of quoting the former Labour Shadow Chancellors. We know that our plans will...
Former Labour Shadow Chancellor? He's citing George Osborne. George Osborne's a Tory through and through. I don't remember George Osborne being part of the Labour Party.
Deliver lower inflation and lower interest rates, but we know that his plans just mean more debt, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, year after year after year. Those aren't my words, that's the assessment of the former Labour Shadow Chancellor.
Mr. Speaker, the question was how many more people this year are going to be paying more on their mortgages? And the answer that he avoided giving again, he knows these answers. He's got the stats there in front of him. 930,000 people. So by the end of this year, I know they don't want to talk about it, that's why he won't answer the questions. By the end of this year, nearly 2 million homeowners, counting the cost of the Tories' economic vandalism with every mortgage payment they make. And it's not just those who already own their home that are counting the cost of Tory recklessness. The average deposit for a first-time buyer is going up to £9,000. Does he even know how long it would take an average saver to put that sort of money aside?
Mr. Speaker, that's why...
They're saying how long. He's going to answer it the next question, let's be honest.
Mr. Speaker, that's why we've introduced a 95% mortgage guarantee scheme, Mr. Speaker. It's why we're helping people in social housing own their own home through our first homes and our shared home ownership schemes. But, Mr. Speaker, I said these things are working because I said last year we had a record number of first-time buyers, the highest number in 20 years. It was, Mr. Speaker, twice the number of first-time buyers than Labour ever managed, Mr. Speaker. So whilst Labour failed homeowners, the Conservatives are delivering for them.
I don't know, bro. When you look at the interest rates, I'd be concerned. if you're not on a fixed rate right now, you're in big trouble.
Mr. Speaker, every week, whatever the topic, he stands there and pretends everything is fine across the country. And every week he does so, he reinforces just how out of touch he is. £9,000, ha ha ha, £9,000 would take 4 years. They think it's funny that 4 years for the average saver to save £9,000. Or to put it a different way, in terms the Prime Minister will understand, roughly the annual bill to heat his swimming pool. But for most people, 4 more years of scrimping is a hammer blow to their ambitions. And now he's kicking them when they're down, because his decision to scrap housing targets is killing the dream of home ownership for a generation. Why doesn't he admit he got it wrong and reverse it?
Yeah, the main issue is just NIMBYs who don't allow houses to be built near them because they it will lower their house value. That's the main problem. It's NIMBYs are the biggest problem, or not the biggest problem, but one of the biggest problems we have in this country. Don't want anything built near them because it will lower their house value, but then complain about like services and other things. Just the worst people.
Mr. Speaker, I promised to put local people in control of new housing.
There's the issue
and I'm proud that that's what I delivered within 6 weeks of becoming Prime Minister. Now, he wants to impose top-down housing targets. He wants to concrete over the green belt and ride roughshod over local communities. Now, previously...
It's not even just about using like the green belt. It's about using brown sites. There's so many like empty like buildings and like former like industrial sites that we could use for housing, but we choose not to. If you look at my town, we have a big bus station, former bus station, two actually, that were used, and the one of them, the building's completely empty, and one of them, the land's completely empty. Nothing's been done with them for about a decade now. So there are other options. It's just the people are stupid and don't realise it.
Mr. Speaker, he did say, he's on record and saying, local people, local communities should have more power, more control. Now he's U-turned. Just another in a long list of broken promises.
Mr. Speaker, the only power is given to local communities not to build houses. And we know why he won't change course. He admitted it last month. His councillors simply don't want to build the houses local people need, so he's given them a way out. Picture the scene as he explains this to a family. Mum and Dad paying £4,000 extra on the mortgage because the Tories tanked the economy. Their eldest paying hundreds more in rent. Their youngest still stuck in the spare room because they need an extra £9,000 for a deposit. Then along comes the Prime Minister and merrily tells them, sorry for crashing the economy. We don't want to talk about that. Sorry I can't help you with the house building, but my councillors don't like it. Oh, and before I go, here's a massive council tax increase for your troubles. Why doesn't he stop the excuses, stop blaming everyone else, and just build some houses instead?
Yeah, got him pretty good there. Let's see what the response is. But yeah, honestly, he's given a lot of power to NIMBYs.
Mr. Speaker, our memories on that short. We all know what happened last time when they were in power. There was no money left for the country.
Oh, he's gone for the Greg Hands. He's gone for the Greg Hands joke of, there was no money left. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, great one, Sunak, mate. Yeah, real good joke. 13 years ago.
But let's talk about the record. Let's talk about the Labour record on house building, Mr. Speaker. In London, the former Conservative mayor built 60,000 affordable homes in his first 5 years in office. How many did the current Labour mayor manage? Half of that, Mr. Speaker.
I mean, okay, you're talking about Sadiq Khan. We're talking about you, big man. What's your record? Not very good.
In Wales, we need 12,000 new homes a year. How many have Labour built in the last year? Half of that, Mr. Speaker. As ever, Labour talk and the Conservatives deliver.
We didn't deliver anything. You cited Boris Johnson's role as mayor. That was about 6 years ago, or 7 years ago. Like, you haven't proved your point at all.
Mr. Speaker, debt doubled since 2010, growth down, tax up, the economy crashed. Mr. Speaker, they're going to need a bigger note. And it's right. But week
A bigger
after week,
nose.
we debate the issues facing
A bigger nose. What does that mean?
in this place. But looking beyond the elections tomorrow, we also have a hugely significant weekend coming up with the King's coronation. For most, this will be the first time they've seen a monarch crowned. And I hope, and I know across the House, people will hope that people across the country enjoy the ceremony, the street...
Oh, no one cares about the monarchy. Let's be honest now. It's only like Gen Xers like you who might care about it, and boomers. That's it.
...parties, and of course the extra day off. 300 million will tune in. The world will see our country at its best, celebrating the beginning of a new chapter in our history. But it will also be a reminder of the loss of our late Queen, Elizabeth II, and a chance again to remember all that she gave to our country through her dedicated service. So will the Prime Minister join me in honouring our late Queen and wishing the new King a long and happy reign?
What a waste of a
Mr. Speaker, as I said at the outset, we're all looking very much forward to the coronation. It will be a very special moment in the history of our country, and I know that we will join with the country in celebrating it. But before we get to the coronation weekend, Mr. Speaker, we have an important day tomorrow, and the choice before the country is clear. When they go to that ballot box, they can see a party that stands for higher council tax, higher crime, and
higher income tax, higher crime. You know, you guys try to fudge the numbers, the crime numbers, by taking out fraud. That didn't go down well, did it? So, you know, his arguments there, you can flip it all on him because it's true.
Litany of broken promises, Mr. Speaker.
Bro, like, you guys have broken consistent manifesto promises on tax, on national insurance.
Meanwhile, we're getting on with delivering what we say with lower council tax, lower crime and fewer potholes. The choice is clear. Vote Conservative, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Labour-run Kirklees Council, Mr. Speaker, as you know, have reneged on a deal to house the National Rugby League Museum at the George Hotel. They've also declared a climate emergency, but they have one of the worst recycling rates in the country. They're building on green fields and now on green belt. They're demolishing Home Firth indoor...
Is it me, or is this dude just moving weird? He's like a bird who's thinks he's seen something in the distance.
Market. We're blighted by litter and fly tipping, and now they're proposing to chop down mature trees in urban areas. Does Mr. agree with me?
No, you'll sit down a moment. I presume you're going to ask a question. You've made a great step. Quick question.
Does the Prime Minister agree with me that local people can have their say on Kirklees' appalling record by voting Conservative this week?
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is absolutely right. It's typical Labour saying one thing and doing the other, Mr. Speaker. It's only the Conservatives that are going to protect the Green Belt. It's a Labour Party that are going to concrete over it, and that's why in Kirklees and elsewhere, tomorrow, vote Conservative, Mr. Speaker.
We now come to the Leader of the SNP, Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, in 2010, David Cameron convinced Nick Clegg to drop his pledge on university tuition fees. Does the Prime Minister intend to take the credit for convincing the leader of the Labour Party to do likewise?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank the
reason.
honourable gentleman for the question. I'd say it's hard to keep up, Mr. Speaker, with a list of broken promises. What I would say on tuition fees is I'm proud that under this government we now have a record number of people that are going to university from disadvantaged backgrounds, Mr. Speaker, and that's because the efforts we've placed to put more money into supporting those people and those communities to fulfil their aspirations, alongside fantastic new apprenticeships in every part of our country.
Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, for the avoidance of any doubt, the Liberal Democrats don't believe in abolishing tuition fees. The Conservatives don't believe in abolishing tuition fees, and of course the Labour Party, now with their own Nick Clegg moment, don't believe in abolishing tuition fees.
I don't think it's as bad as Nick Clegg, I'll be honest, just because Nick Clegg, do you know what, right? He's mentioned Nick Clegg, so I'm going to have to do the song. But the thing with Nick Clegg is he got into power and then reneged on it, and it was really bad. That's the difference. You know, you can argue it's not a big difference, but you know, Starmer isn't in power, so him reneging on the promise isn't as bad. But yeah, it's a slight annoyance, but it's not the worst dig to have at the Labour Party, honestly, especially given how stupid it is that they announced it yesterday.
But Mr. Speaker, is it not the case that the main Westminster parties don't offer young people any hope at all, do they?
Actually, I'll gently point out to the honourable gentleman that if you're from a disadvantaged background, you're far more likely to go to university in England than you are in Scotland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner in Dorset has delivered 174 new police officers. He's quadrupled the rural crime team and has made Dorset the 6th safest county. As recorded crime is 34% higher under Labour Police and Crime Commissioners, does the Prime Minister agree with me that only Conservatives can be trusted to keep local communities safe and make sure offenders face the justice they deserve?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is right. It's a simple statement of fact. Crime is lower in areas which have Conservative police and crime commissioners, and I'm delighted that Dorset has been selected as one of the areas to pilot our new immediate justice scheme, which will deliver swift and visible punishment so victims of antisocial behaviour know that it will be treated seriously and with all urgency.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. His government's vile and immoral refugee ban bill and the toxic language coming from the Home Office isn't even dog whistle politics. It is a giant, hard-right foghorn blasting out a poisonous them and us narrative, and it plumbed new depths last week when the Home Office Minister claimed that people trying to come to the UK, and I quote, tend to have completely different values to those in the UK. Can he explain what he thinks are so different about the values held by the people of war-torn Sudan? And can he tell us what values are stopping him from creating a Sudanese family visa scheme like he did for the people of Ukraine?
That's a good question. Solid question.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this country has a proud history of welcoming almost 500,000 refugees over the past several years, and we will always continue to do so. But our ability to do that is absolutely hampered when we have tens of thousands of people illegally crossing the channel every year.
Bro, the issue is that you're not processing the claims. That's the issue.
And it's precisely because we want to help the most vulnerable people, whether they be in Syria and Afghanistan, Sudan and elsewhere. We must get a grip of this problem, break the cycle of the criminal gangs, and target our resources and compassion on those who most need it.
Bro is waffling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thanks to this Conservative government and £1.8 million from the Brownfield Land Release Fund, the Conservative-led Solihull Council is getting on with regenerating Kingshurst Village Centre, creating space for new businesses and new homes. But when it comes to economic regeneration, none of the opposition parties have a viable plan, not the Greens, not the Lib Dems and not the Labour Party. And the Labour candidate has gone so far as to scare local people into thinking that the development won't go ahead, despite spades in the ground. So does the Prime Minister agree with me, while the opposition talk down opportunity and the creation of jobs?
Bro, she's done. She's done. She wants to go home. She's so done.
When it comes to investing in our communities, it's only the Conservative-led Solihull Council that can do it.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with my honourable friend, and I'm so glad to see the local Conservatives delivering for the people of Solihull with dozens of new family homes, new flexible commercial space and a new integrated health, social care and community hub. As he said, it's clear for his local area only the Conservatives can deliver.
Alan Brown.
Mr. Speaker, imagine seeing the car in front of you swerving erratically or suddenly braking for no reason, risking your car slamming into the back of that, endangering those daft enough not to wear seat belts. Now, this is not the actions of a drunk or reckless driver, but my constituents' experience using Tesla in autopilot mode. Software still in beta phase, but deemed suitable for cars on our public roads. Will the Prime Minister meet with me to discuss the issues with Tesla's autopilot and instigate an urgent critical safety review in terms of its suitability for operation and the licensing of it?
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry to hear about what happened to the honourable member's constituent. I'll ensure that he gets a meeting with the Transport Secretary to discuss the safe regulation of autonomous and self-driving vehicles.
Carl McCarthy.
Mr. Speaker, Labour-run City of Lincoln Council has destroyed the 40-year reputation of our city's Christmas market and the Christmas cheer that Lincoln benefits from annually. The dereliction of their role, choosing to take the easiest option behind closed doors in secret, in cancelling the market, shows Labour's neglect and disregard for small local businesses, charities and entrepreneurs and voters. Labour councillors Lincoln should be ashamed of their actions and have rightfully been likened to the Grinch.
Order. Mr. Brennan, I don't need you shouting from the back row. I've always offered a cup of tea to this side, but it's equally opportunity for you to take one. Come on, Carmen.
I thank the member from the opposite side for the extra minutes he's given me, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow the people of Lincoln will have the chance to remove...
I will not count on that.
Tomorrow the people of Lincoln will have the chance to remove from office the anti-business, socialist Scrooges and elect local Conservatives. Does my right honourable friend the Prime Minister agree with me that for better run local services, business...
We're going to skip some of these filler questions.
I think in fairness...
A Christmas market in Lincoln.
Ahead of tomorrow's local elections, I've been campaigning in Medway and Swindon. The word on the doorstep is that people are ready for a change and will be switching their votes from the Conservatives to Labour. However, I am concerned that only 4% of those without valid ID have applied online for a voter authority certificate. So will the Prime Minister commit to a post-election review of how many people have effectively been disenfranchised by his government's response to the virtually non-existent problem of voter fraud?
Yeah, for me, this is a big problem where if they do manage to disenfranchise voters, I think they will continue with this, and they might make the rules even worse because it's a blatant attempt to disenfranchise voters. Absolutely blatant that they want to stop certain kinds of people voting. Hence why they do these rules. That's one of the reasons why they want this stuff in America or have this stuff in certain states. Is to stop specific people voting on the whole. So, I don't doubt what she says about people voting to want a change and all this kind of stuff, but if they can't vote because they don't have ID, then it doesn't matter.
Mr. Speaker, 98% of people already possess a suitable form of voter ID, and the government made available free alternative ID for those that do not have it.
The thing is, people don't know they need an ID. That's the problem, because the rule's recent. This is the first election, I think, where you're going to need a voter ID, and the government haven't really told people about it. It's the opposition parties telling people you need ID to vote. So he's talking nonsense, because you have to apply for it, and the deadline went ages ago. The deadline went about 2 weeks ago.
Pilots have demonstrated it hasn't significantly impacted turnout, and indeed this was a policy that was introduced by the Labour Party in Northern Ireland all those years ago. It's common in European countries, it's common in Canada, and it's absolutely right that we introduce it here too.
Dr. Mahindra.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since getting elected in 2019, I've been inundated with correspondence from my constituents in South West Hertfordshire, rightly complaining about huge speculative developments on our beautiful Greenbelt land. Lib Dem-controlled Three Rivers District Council continue to dither and delay their local plan. Does he agree with me that the choice tomorrow is simple? Vote Conservative to protect our Greenbelt, or vote Lib Dem for massive developments on sport land?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend raises an important point, and it's always the same with Liberal Democrats, saying one thing and doing the other. We've all seen it, Mr. Speaker. It's the Conservatives that are party of local decisions taken by local people, and it's only the Conservatives that will protect the Greenbelt.
Bernie Killifoy.
Thank you.
You can't argue the Conservative Party or the party of like the Greenbelt and nature, given what they've done to the rivers and stuff like that. That stuff's horrible now. Disenfranchised voters on a large scale will be will make for a fraught coronation. Voter ID in Northern Ireland is available free of charge. Yeah, and the thing is, they've had voter ID laws for a lot longer in Northern Ireland, but in Great Britain, it's literally just this election cycle. And the thing is, if they were smart, they would have brought it in for the general election, but they didn't. So yeah, and plus you still got postal vote anyway, so a lot of people use postal vote.
Unable to secure an NHS dental appointment, my constituent Ray was forced to go private. It was then discovered that he had a large aggressive tumour in his face and jaw, which required 16 hours of gruelling surgery to remove it. If he hadn't been able to afford it, Ray might not be with us now. This is yet another chapter in the horror story that is the decay of dentistry under this government's watch. So will the Prime Minister accept NHS dentistry is in crisis, and will he meet with me and the British Dental Association to ensure that no one loses their life because they couldn't get a dental appointment? Yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry.
The NHS dentistry, I was lucky. I managed to kind of find a local one, which I need to make sure, because they take you off the register if you don't go after a while, and I don't know how long a while is to them. But yeah, it's when you go private, you pay double. You can pay around double the normal cost, and it's terrifying. Honestly, it's really, really bad. The state of the kind of NHS dentistry, and you can run into all sorts of problems if you're not careful. So for me personally, this is one of the biggest shameful things that the Tory party have done. Like, there was in one of the cities or one of the towns in South England, there was a group, I think it's a non-profit, right, where they deal with developing countries, and they go around and they try and fix people's teeth in developing countries. They were active in that town because people can't get access to an NHS dentist, and they were just there kind of trying to help people out, cleaning teeth and stuff like that. It's honestly shameful, because the amount it costs to go private is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous in this country. I think dentistry in the UK is the highest, or some of the highest in Europe, and so for it not to be properly government funded is just shambolic. I'll be honest, it's so bad.
To hear what happened to the Honourable Lady's constituent, and that's why the NHS has recently reformed dental contracts to improve access. We now invest over £3 billion a year. There are over 500 more dentists working in the NHS this year than last year, and indeed discussions are ongoing between the Department for Health and the NHS around dentistry, and DHSC is planning to outline further reform measures in the near future.
Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown.
Every single young person that gets on the housing ladder under a Conservative government makes our communities more sustainable. Would my right honourable friend agree that in order to build the right type of housing and speed it up, we need to fund planning authorities properly through innovative funding?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend, as ever, makes an excellent point, and that's why the reforms that we are supportive of that.
Follow-up question.
Polly Lynch.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The recent ITV documentary Life and Debt Stories from the Edge followed Halifax mum Izzy. Her prepayment energy bills have tripled, and she was relying on a local primary school, Ash Green, who are providing free breakfast, budget cooking classes and a hardship fund for their families. When head teacher Mungo Shepherd is asked does he worry about the children at his school when he goes home at night, he says all the time, it never leaves you. Does the Prime Minister think it's right that things are so bad that schools are having to become the fourth emergency service for the families that they support?
And the thing is, the schools don't even have the money for this sort of stuff. The schools in the UK are not doing well financially. A lot of them are in disrepair. So for schools to have to step in to help people, because the DWP has failed them, the Conservative government have failed them, and the other systems have failed them. It's tragic in a so-called developed country, honestly.
Well, Mr. Speaker, because of the actions we've taken, a typical family, including those like Izzy's, will be seeing half of their energy bills paid for by the government. That is support worth £1,500 extended in the...
It doesn't matter if you support half it, because the energy bills have gone up by like £2,000 or something like that. If you're not on a fixed tariff, you're screwed. So the idea that, we're paying half of it, it's like you're paying half of a thing that's like gone over double in like the last year, and you haven't done anything. You haven't done windfall taxes. You haven't kind of tried to at least deal with these companies that have engaged in price gouging. It's absolutely ridiculous, his answer.
Most recent budget. For the most vulnerable in our society, there's additional support, and £900 for those on welfare, Mr. Speaker, and through the holiday activity and food programme, support for families with the cost and support for food during the holidays. But I would also say, for Izzy and others that are in particular need, they should talk to their council, because the Chancellor has provided over £1 billion of funding to the Household Support Fund. It's there to help families like that.
£1 billion across how many families over what time span? That's the real question. Because I tell you what, £1 billion over, millions of households over, 3 years, it's not going to help at all. So can you explain all of that?
A little bit of extra assistance during this time.
Sir John Whittingdale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my honourable friend will be aware, today is World Press Freedom Day.
Oh, maybe not.
At a time when the need for professional and factual journalism has never been greater, will my right honourable friend reaffirm the government's commitment to defending media freedom worldwide? And will he redouble the efforts of the government to obtain the release of Evan Gershkovich and Vladimir Kara-Murza in Russia and of Jimmy Lai in Hong Kong?
Mr. Speaker, the government is committed to defending media freedom worldwide, because thriving independent journalism is one of the cornerstones of democracy. We absolutely condemn the politically motivated sentencing of journalists across the world, and our embassies and missions work every day to protect media freedom where they are based. And I know that this is something that my right honourable friend has been a right champion of throughout his career, and I will look forward to him continuing to do so from a different perch as I take rather fewer questions from him over the next few months from this position.
McKinnell.
Wait, what?
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank our police forces, who I know will be working hard across the country this weekend to support the coronation event.
Question.
But police numbers in the North East are down 8% since 2010. And I know the Prime Minister's keen on his maths, so here's a sum. If Northumberland Police has lost 1,000 police officers since 2010, but gained the funding to put back 615, by how much have the Conservatives shortchanged the North East?
Maybe it's not a Villa question. Maybe it's a good question.
So,
maybe it's a good question.
Mr. Speaker, as we saw last week, there are now a record number of police officers across the country thanks to the actions of this government, and crime is 50% lower than it was when
That's not even true. Someone needs to pull him up on that. Crime is not 50% lower. It's because they omitted the fraud statistics out of the crime. If we get rid of murder and theft as well, that'll make the crime statistics even lower.
Office. She talks about investing. She talks about investing in the North East. When we invested Levelling Up Fund in her constituency, £20 million, she said it was transformational, Mr. Speaker. She said it would play an important role in rejuvenating her local area. That's this Conservative government delivering not just for the North East, but for her constituents too.
Mr. Speaker, I was pleased to welcome the Secretary of State for Transport to Newsham recently. This was to see the progress on the Northumberland line. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that this Conservative government, and Conservative government only, is committed to development of this line, keeping Levelling Up on track?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend has been a fantastic champion for the restoration of this line. Indeed,
Mr. Speaker, over 3.6 million women born in the 1950s had their pension age increased without their knowledge. And many, like my constituent, unknowingly gave up work at 60, only to realise they had no income, they couldn't pay their bills, and some have even lost their homes. So my constituent asks the Prime Minister today, will he commit to the fair and fast payment of any compensation that is recommended by the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman to 1950s women for the injustice they have suffered due to maladministration by the Department for Work and Pensions?
I'm not 100% sure what this is about. I think it's they changed the pension age for women, and so I think a lot of women really protested against it aggressively, which I don't blame them for. But with the early retirement stuff, I think that it affected certain age groups. So if they had cut-off points and things like that, and so they may not have realised they weren't eligible for a pension until they reached a certain age, even though because of the way they've set it up, the Tories or whoever at the time. And so they did go to court. I think they lost in court. I think they're called WASPy women. I'm not 100% sure, but it was a really weird and it was a bit gnarly, to be honest.
Mr. Speaker, this issue has been long discussed in this place, and obviously the Honourable Lady knows there's an ongoing process which I can't comment on, but rest assured, of course, we will respond appropriately to any recommendations that come our way.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As Asbestos Awareness Month comes to a close, I would like to draw the attention of the Prime Minister to the dangers of asbestos in workplace buildings. Please would he back the Don't Let the Dust Settle campaign for the Mesothelioma UK charity in my constituency by setting up a register of all workplaces in the country that contain asbestos and determine a timetable of eradication of this terrible substance.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I thank my honourable friend for raising this important issue? The law does require duty holders to assess whether asbestos is present, what condition it is in, and whether...
Asbestos is pretty gnarly. Like, I think one of my uncles, he has the problem in his garage where there's asbestos there as well, and it's kind of delayed his construction. I think it's only a real problem if it's agitated, but the problem is I don't know how you describe agitation. It's really bad, and there's a lot of construction in the UK where asbestos has been used. It's not good.
Whether it gives rise to a risk of exposure, and they must draw up a plan to manage this risk, which must include removal if it can't be safely managed where it is located. But I commend her for her continued campaigning on this important
Let's
issue.
see if we can get one more quick question, then we'll watch my
Thank
favourite
you very
video of all
much,
time.
Mr. Speaker. Nick swims regularly in the Thames at Shepperton.
What?
But after a recent dip, he found himself hospitalised with cellulitis for 13 days. His doctors think this was caused by polluted water. Mr. Speaker, what caused that polluted water? Well, because
I can see what caused the polluted water. She's right there, look.
Thames Water dumped filthy sewage just days earlier nearby.
Whoever's producing the PMQs does a great job sometimes. They'll cut to the relevant minister.
So can the Prime Minister tell Nick and everybody else, why does he think it's okay for water companies to keep polluting our rivers for another 25 years?
Mr. Speaker, it was just last week that it was clear there's only one party that's going to protect the environment.
It's not
and
you.
the Conservative
It's not you.
Party.
It's not you.
Mr. Speaker.
It's not you.
That's why we've given the Environment Agency more powers of enforcement. That's why we're moving to unlimited fines. And that's why we've got a clear plan to increase investment and increase monitoring of sewage overflows. It was a rank cynicism and hypocrisy of the party opposite that they could not even show up to support those plans, Mr. Speaker.
Anne-Marie Morris. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Newton Abbot constituents face hosepipe bans after torrential spring storms and are asking me why water catchment plans have not prevented this. Reservoirs, desalination plants and other natural catchment structures require siting where geography and geology allows. Is there a national strategy and implementation?
Are you talking about asbestos ackies? Because yeah, that stuff's pretty gnarly. I'll be honest. From what I've read about it, it's not. Yeah, it's you need it. You need it taken out really. Like you can't mess around with it.
Plan, increase water catchment and enable cross-water company water transfer to match regional demand to supply.
Yes. Well, Mr. Speaker, water companies publish water resources management plans which show how they will continue to provide a secure supply of water for customers, and I understand that they have been consulting on their latest drafts of these plans. And in my honourable friend's particular area of Devon and Cornwall, where temporary use bans are in place, DEFRA and the water regulators are closely working with South West Water to ensure that the company is taking all appropriate precautionary action to ensure that water supplies remain resilient this year.
That's all for now on Prime Minister's questions.
Let's go to my favourite clip of all time. Right, you guys are not ready for this. I'm glad we've got a couple more people they can witness this, because I've heard some people have not heard this. Right, and I tell you what, this is my favourite song of all time. This is genuinely, I can go back, I can listen to this, no matter how old I am, no matter how long time has passed, and it's the greatest thing ever. All right. So, get ready, guys, in the comments, because you're not ready for this. If you have heard this, then you already know. This went to #1 in the charts. That's how good it is, right?
I'd like to take this opportunity to put a few things straight. When I meet people around the country, it's obvious that many of you have strong and pretty mixed reactions to some of the things that Liberal Democrats have done in government. Many of you tell me that you're glad that at a time of real economic uncertainty, we put aside our political differences to provide our country with stable leadership. But I also meet people who are disappointed and angry that we couldn't keep all our promises. We couldn't keep all our promises. Above all, our promise not to raise tuition fees. And to those people, I say this. We made a promise before the election that we would vote against any rising fees. We would vote against any rising fees. We would vote against any rising fees. It was a pledge made with the best of intentions. The best of intentions. But we shouldn't have made a promise we weren't absolutely sure we could deliver.
You're watching this, Keir Starmer, because this could be you. Someone could do this to you if you apologise. That's why politicians shouldn't apologise, but I'm glad Nick Clegg did, because...
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. There's no easy way to say it. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. There's no easy way to say it. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. When we're wrong, we hold our hands up, but when we're right, we hold our heads up too. You learn from your mistakes, and that's what we will do. I accept that won't be enough for everyone, but I owe it to you. You learn from your mistakes, and that's what we will do. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. There's no easy way to say it. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. There's no easy way to say it. I'm sorry.
It's not old. It's vintage, Akis. It's vintage. Okay. This is. Some people haven't heard this, right? And this is the greatest thing. This is the greatest contribution any politician has made to the United Kingdom over the last 13 years. Okay. And I won't hear otherwise. I won't hear otherwise. This is genuinely. This is art. This belongs in a museum where it should be played on repeat, because this is that good. Honestly.
I'm sorry, we are sorry, we are sorry. The Liberal Democrats are sorry. There's no easy way to say it. We are sorry, we are sorry, we are sorry, we are sorry. The Liberal Democrats are sorry. There's no easy way to say it. We are sorry. And if we've lost your trust, that's how I hope we can start to win it back.
It's an absolute banger. Like, I would never hear a bad word against this song, you know. Like, I commented, I listened to this a year. See, this is what I mean, right? I go back to this once in a while. Every time someone mentions tuition fees, and I put, what a classic. And, you know, some of the comments here are just so good. Like, if I had a penny every time Nick Clegg lied, I'd have enough money to go to uni. Why do I remember all the words to this after 7 years? I love that this is immortalised Nick Clegg. It's just really good. And, you know, Nick Clegg was a good sport about it. I guess you have to be. But this is like an OG kind of like thing. Honestly, this is I'd replay it. I'd replay it honestly. So anytime they mention tuition fees, right, you're going to be hearing this. You're going to be hearing this because it's synonymous. You know, this is the thing. I think one of the things that killed the Lib Dems, I'll be honest, because they got a lot of youth support back in 2010. Like a lot of youth support, you know. Even I wasn't old enough to vote, but I was like, damn, this guy, you know, he looks like he's special. You know, he's got something, and you know, boy was I right, because he was special, because he had no idea what he was doing, and he made a monumental failure for his party. They were wiped out at local elections. They were wiped out at national elections. He lost his seat to a guy who turned out he used electoral funds for nefarious purposes, like buying drugs. But honestly. Yeah, there will never be... No one can tell me this is not a 10 out of 10 song. No one can tell me that. You know, they even mix it up at the end, which you don't even see in a lot of modern music. But yeah, this is an absolute classic. Yeah, I'll never hear a bad word about this song, honestly. I can listen to it all the time. It's so good. So anytime they mention tuition fees, you're going to be hearing that because I have to. And, you know, I don't care. I won't be sorry.
We made a promise before any rising was a pledge. The best, absolutely sure we could deliver.
I'll keep playing this, and I won't be.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry.
I won't apologise for it because it's so good. I mean, it's got like almost 4 million views. It's mental, honestly, absolutely mental. Like, people go back to this once in a while. The song that broke the back of Liberal Democrats for a generation, you know. Yeah, I mean, because he got caught. That's why he got caught. That's the difference, you know. If you don't get caught, it doesn't matter what you do. That's them's the rules. Honestly, Eric, yeah, this is. I'll tell you what, right? I was gonna stream to about 1 o'clock anyway, so we're gonna play this again. We're gonna play this again, and then I'm gonna go. But we're gonna listen to this again because that's how much I love this song. I genuinely, hand on heart, I love this song.
I'd like to tell me that you're glad that at a time of real economic uncertainty, we put aside our political differences to provide our country with stable leadership. But I also meet people who are disappointed and angry that we couldn't keep all our promises. We couldn't keep all our promises. Above all, our promise not to raise tuition fees.
And, you know, it makes me sad that people haven't heard this song. Genuinely does. Every time I speak to someone about this song and they say, I haven't heard it, and I'm like, but how?
And to those people, I say this. We made a promise before the election that we would vote against any rising fees. We would vote against any rising fees. We would vote against any...
Who is he? This is Nick Clegg. He was a former deputy prime minister. He was there in the coalition government. He basically went into coalition with the Tories, and I think the Lib Dems had around 50 MPs, which was like a record amount. And he botched it because he gambled everything on getting a voting reform referendum. And then what happened was he lost the referendum, and then people clowned him because of the tuition fees and stuff. Excuse me. And all of the bad things that the coalition government did was blamed on the Lib Dems, and all the good things were credited to the Tories. And so what happened is the Lib Dems lost. They went from I think 50 odd seats to about 8 seats. It just did not end well for him. And then Nick Clegg apologised. So about 2 years later, he apologised for the failures about the tuition fees and stuff. Because instead of the Lib Dems ran on abolishing tuition fees, and then they raised them, they tripled them to 9k, and they made the system worse. And so Nick Clegg apologised about it, and then people made this.
Rising fees. It was a pledge made with the best of intentions. The best of intentions. But we shouldn't have made a promise we weren't absolutely sure we could deliver. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. There's no easy way to say it. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. There's no easy way to say it. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. When we're wrong, we hold our hands up, but when we're right, we hold our heads up too. You learn from your mistakes, and that's what we will do. I accept that won't be enough for everyone, but I owe it to you. You learn from your mistakes, and that's what we will do. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. There's no easy way to say.
We do need more irony on YouTube, but I don't think anything beats this. Honestly, I just nothing on the internet can beat this.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. There's no easy way to say it. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, we are sorry, we are sorry. The Liberal Democrats are sorry. There's no easy way to say it. We are sorry, we are sorry, we are sorry, we are sorry. The Liberal Democrats are sorry. There's no easy way to say it. We are sorry. And if we've lost your trust, that's how I hope we can start to win it back.
I'm sorry. It's so great. Honestly, this is the greatest thing. This is one of the greatest things on the internet. This is one of the greatest things on the internet. But I've got to go. I've got like some videos I need to record and some other pieces I need to get done. So I'm gonna call it a day there. And I'll catch you guys next week. I do want to add a midweek stream or some sort of like other stream, but I don't know what to do or when to do it. That's the only problem I run into. I'm trying to think of like topics and stuff to cover. That's the tricky bit. So I might put a community post up just to see what people want me to cover and things like that. But yeah, I'm gonna shoot. But if you haven't heard this, or if catch you on Friday. If people don't know about this song, you got to show them it, because this is the greatest thing they'll see probably all year. I'll be honest. But yeah, I'll catch you all next time.